All right, let's get right into it. The year is 1915. World War I is just absolutely tearing Europe to shreds. And across the Atlantic, America is officially neutral. But former President Theodore Roosevelt, well, he's watching this all unfold, and he sees this terrifying lesson taking shape. So he puts pen to paper to sound an urgent alarm for his country, basically arguing that if America wanted to preserve peace, it had to get ready for war. Roosevelt kicks things off by just capturing the mood of the time. I mean, you have to imagine, this was a world that really thought it was in an age of enlightenment. And then suddenly, boom, the most destructive war in human history just erupts. The shock was real. It felt, as he put it, almost unbelievable that a disaster this big was even possible. And to explain how civilization could just collapse like that, Roosevelt used a metaphor that everybody at the time would have understood instantly: the Titanic. Think about it. 1 minute, you're on this incredible ship. It's the peak of modern technology, a symbol of safety and progress. The next, in one single, shattering moment, you're plunged into a dark, icy abyss. That's exactly how Roosevelt saw the start of the Great War. So you gotta ask, how could this even happen? What was the weak link in the chain that allowed everything to just break apart so fast? For Roosevelt, the problem was crystal clear. The very things meant to keep the peace, all those treaties and international agreements, they were proving to be completely worthless. He points to two little countries as Exhibit A, Belgium and Luxembourg. Now, both of them were officially neutral, and their security wasn't just a wish, it was supposedly guaranteed by international treaties, signed by the great powers of Europe. They were supposed to be totally safe. And what happened to these two small nations would become this critical, brutal lesson for Roosevelt about the true nature of power and of promises. Okay, now this slide is really interesting because the contrast tells the whole story. On one side, you have Luxembourg. It put all its faith in those treaties. It had basically no army. So when Germany invaded, it didn't resist. And as Roosevelt pointed out, the world pretty much forgot it even existed. But then you have Belgium. They also built up forts, they raised an army, they fought back, heroically. Now, yeah, they were brutalized and trampled, but their incredible sacrifice earned the world's respect. Here's the key takeaway. One was defenseless and forgotten, the other fought, suffered, but kept its honor. And this right here, this moment, just perfectly captures why those treaties were useless. When the British ambassador protested the invasion, citing the treaty, the German chancellor basically scoffed at him. He asked if Britain was really going to go to war just for a scrap of paper. For Roosevelt, that one little phrase revealed a horrifying truth. When a crisis hits, a promise means nothing if you don't have the power to back it up. And this realization brought Roosevelt right back to his most famous idea in foreign policy, a philosophy for how a great nation should carry itself in a really dangerous world. We've all heard the phrase, carry a big stick, right? But what frustrated Roosevelt was that people always forgot the first half of the proverb. He always stressed that it starts with speak softly. That means you have to be courteous, you have to be fair, you don't go around wronging other people. The big stick, that military strength, that was the necessary insurance policy. It was there to protect yourself and to stop others from doing wrong to you. It was a philosophy of peace through strength. Roosevelt had absolutely zero patience for what he called the ultra-pacifists, the people who argued that being defenseless would somehow save you from aggression. He saw that as just a dangerous fantasy. He'd say, just look at the evidence. Look at Luxembourg, a country basically wiped off the map because all it had was a piece of paper for defense. Or look at China, a huge, peaceful nation that was a victim of aggression over and over again. To Roosevelt, weakness wasn't a virtue, it was like putting a giant kick-me sign on your back. But Roosevelt's vision actually went way beyond just American strength. He was imagining a totally new way to keep the peace on a global scale. And he drew on something he knew well, using this great analogy from the American frontier. See, in some lawless town, before you had a real police force, the sheriff would call up a posse comitatus, a group of armed, good citizens to go stop the outlaws. He argued the world needed the exact same thing, a posse of civilized nations ready and willing to act together to enforce international law. And he laid out a plan that was, wow, surprisingly modern. Step 1, create an international court to settle arguments peacefully. Step 2, get the world's powerful law-abiding nations to form a collective force. That's your posse. And step 3, the most important part, is to have them all promise to use their combined military power to enforce what the court decides. This wasn't some fuzzy idea, it was a blueprint for collective security. a concept that decades later would directly influence things like NATO and the United Nations. So, what did all this mean for the United States? Well, Roosevelt took this big global vision and brought it right back home with a direct and powerful challenge for his own country. He basically said that for the United States to just stand by and watch the world burn was a complete failure of its duty. America needed to be strong, not to be a bully, not to conquer anyone, but to be a real, effective force for justice. A strong America could protect itself, and as part of that international posse, it could help protect others too. And to really hammer his point home with some fire, he quoted the poet James Russell Lowell. Freedom ain't a gift that tarries long in hands of cowards. For Roosevelt, that just said it all. Liberty isn't some permanent gift you just get to keep. It's something you have to earn and defend constantly with bravery and vigilance. So here we are, over 100 years later, and Roosevelt's arguments are still echoing in all our debates about foreign policy. His call for peace through strength is still a central idea in how nations deal with each other, which, of course, leaves us with that huge, timeless question that he forces us to think about. How does a nation prepare to defend itself without actually looking like a threat to others? Where do you draw that line?